Salve, amici. Today, hodie, we are beginning a new tense. So let's take a look at this tense for today. It should sound a little familiar to the tense that we last introduced, and that was the imperfect tense. This is kind of the opposite of the imperfect tense. That im just meant not. So this is a thoroughly completed action. Um, we are going to have to return to the idea of aspects for the perfect tense because this introduces an aspect that we haven't used before. So let's take a look at our agenda. For the perfect tense, our new aspect is the completed aspect. We also can use the simple aspect when translating the perfect tense. Um, yeah, there we go, completed and simple. Um, for verb forms, we're going to very often change the stem of the noun or of the verb itself, and we'll look at some of the most common ways that stem changes. Um, so V's, U's, S's, and X's. When we put things in these slashes, we're indicating kind of the sounds that are being produced there. And we'll see vowels change occasionally. For the third person plural, um, we have slightly different sound. It's maybe a little unexpected, but let's take a look at a contrast between these three different tenses that we've the two different tenses that we've had so far, and this one new tense. So here is our very familiar picture that we've used regularly to show they are walking in the present tense. Um, and this is a progressive aspect. Okay. We used this picture last time when the imperfect tense was introduced. So imperfect. And this is also progressive. Right? It shows an action in progress. So our last example here is, let's see, I have a little bar here I need to move out of the way. Our last example here, you see these people are not walking, but they must have walked to get to where they were. And this is the equivalent in English of the present perfect. Because with respect to the present tense, this walking is completed. Now, in Latin, we'll use the same word to express this idea. They have walked, and then just they walked. In Latin, those will both be the perfect tense. In English, this is the simple past tense, um, and that simple right there is the aspect. So, same word in Latin will express both, um, or can express both of these ideas. It's just context that will tell us which one is meant. Okay, so yeah, this is our new tense. We'll be looking at completed aspect or a simple aspect for the perfect tense in Latin. Okay, so just to kind of review how we're doing our formation here, and then to see how the formation is changing a little bit with the perfect tense. We're starting with ambula, and that is our stem, the present stem, I guess we should say present stem. And to that, we're adding just the personal endings nt, that shows third plural. Okay. For the imperfect tense, Notice we're still using that present stem, ambula. There's present stem. One thing that we do a little differently, though, is we add a tense marker. Let's see what that one. Okay. And this one's telling us that it's the imperfect tense. And then finally, we use these same personal endings telling us that it is third plural. So ambulabant, they were walking. All right. The perfect tense for some verbs will look a lot like it is using the present stem. This is for every single verb, just about, that ends its present stem with a long A. Just about every single one of those verbs will use what looks like the present stem for its perfect tense. And so we might say that its tense marker is, let's see, why don't we clear that up a little bit, is just the letter V right here. Oh, let's keep our colors consistent, actually. So we'll say, yeah, it looks like the present stem. And right here, this V looks like would be the tense marker. And we have new endings this time around. This third person plural ending for the perfect tense, it does still use that nt, but it's way longer. We have erunt, telling us that it is third person plural. So that nt is still a pretty reliable marker of person and number, but for our other tenses and our other forms, we're going to see that there's some more variation into the person and number markers. So for our types of verbs, we have just seen that the V is not a bad indicator of a tense, of the perfect tense. So let's go ahead and add that perfect tense markers. And for our persons, erunt is how we will show the third person plural. So in English, this would all be equivalent to either they walked or they have walked, right? Showing that it is completed. They are now standing because they have walked to the top of the building. Okay, let's try some more of these. So right here we've got our verb for opening. Our stem, aperi, there is the present stem. And this is just one person, so he is opening. T is what we would expect for the third person singular. In the imperfect tense, we would expect again to see the same present stem, aperi. And we see our tense marker, the ba, as we would expect. And you might remember for fourth and third IO conjugation verbs, we add a long E here. We don't do that for all conjugations. But there's our tense marker. And we add a T at the very end. That same T for our third singular. Okay. So, right, this shows people who were in process of opening. Here's somebody who is in the process of opening. This book is already opened, so the perfect tense would be a exceptional form to use here in describing what is being depicted. So we might start might seem natural to start with the present stem, but some verbs do things a little differently. And we don't have the same present stem anymore. A lot of it is recognizable and similar, but the vowel has totally changed. And so our perfect stem is different from our present stem, aperu. Um, and we are marking or noting the tense sort of with that u sound at the end, closely related to the v or wa sound. U and wa, close relatives. And then our person and number markers in the perfect tense are it for the third person singular. So we're used to seeing we're used to seeing the t certainly for the third person singular, but this I will always accompany it in the perfect tense. Okay, so tense marker, u, and the personal marker, third singular, is it. Um, Now, I want to be clear, these tense markers, um, we won't see multiple tense, perfect tense markers for one verb. Um, a particular verb will use just one of the different tense markers that we're looking at. Okay, so like the verb aperit will never use this V. It only uses the U. Okay. Let's take a look at some other forms here. We're going to fill out this person and number chart. Um, okay, here we've got our verb for sending. Here's our present stem, mitte. This is a third conjugation verb. We can tell because the short E is in the stem. And if you remember, its present stem experiences a little bit of a change. These short E sounds and really any shortened vowel sound that's not accented um, and isn't the first of its word will weaken. So our present stem sort of is mitte. So there's the present stem. But we're still using that same third person singular marker, T, third singular. And you know what? I just realized we're not going to worry about these other forms today. We will look at the other tense markers though, or many of the other tense markers. Okay. So the imperfect tense will use our present stem. And if you remember, because we're always lengthening things, we're not going to see the E shorten here. We're in fact lengthening that present stem. We're using the tense marker ba, tense marker, and we're using the regular old personal ending T to show its third singular, right? This person here was sending the letters, right? In process of sending. But now, see, the letter is open. The letter has been sent. So we want to use the perfect tense now. We are totally losing the vowel. That vowel that marks the conjugation in the present tense, totally gone in the perfect tense. And furthermore, we are making a bigger change. We're adding an S sound to that double T. And through a process of assimilation, those two T's get completely lost. And because we're losing those sounds, we compensate for that loss by lengthening the preceding vowel. Lots of very regular, predictable linguistic changes happening here. But long and short of it is, mis is the perfect stem, supposed to mitte. So this is starting to look really different. However, we will use that same old third person singular ending, right? Third singular for the perfect tense is the it. Okay, so yeah, this verb doesn't use the V to mark the perfect stem. It doesn't use the U. It's added an S sound. And because of that S sound, some other changes have happened earlier in the verb. Um, so S, right before personal endings, is another indicator of the perfect tense. So misit would mean sie sent, which is the simple aspect. And for the perfect aspect, or the completed aspect rather, sie has sent. So this one word can have either of those meanings depending on context. Okay. Let's take a look at some more. So what do we see here? Dike. Oh, he is telling her something, it looks like. So this is another third conjugation verb. So we'll see the same change we saw for the verb sending. So we have the lenition, the weakening of that final vowel. The present stem and our personal ending, still that T, third singular. So he is speaking, dicet. In the imperfect tense, this person was telling someone on the other end of the phone, and we lengthen that final vowel. It's still the present stem. We add the tense marker, ba, tense, and we use the same old personal ending, a T, for third singular. So dikebat, he was telling. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any talking going on right now. Perhaps she has told him yes, or has he just told her, I want to marry you? But there's no talking happening at this moment. So the perfect tense is a good tense to use. Our stem, just like we saw before with the verb for sending, has lost the vowel that marks conjugation. And similar to the last example we looked at, we're going to use this S for our marker, but things get a little tricky. When S is combined with a C, what sound does CS make? That's the X sound. So it's a different letter entirely that we're writing here, but it's still the same S sound. So this is the perfect stem for the verb of telling, and it will continue to use the totally predictable third person singular endings, it. So this here means sie said or sie has said. You remember which of these is the simple and which of these is the completed? Sie has said is completed. Sie said is the simple aspect. Okay. So we are adding X, and I'm putting parentheses around it because X really is just a different way of writing the S right here. And that U and V, those are also really, really closely related. It basically just depends on whether a vowel precedes the introduction of the tense marker. Okay, let's move along. So now we've got copy. This is our verb for taking. So let's see, we're looking at our present stem, here copy, present stem, and we'll just add our personal ending right onto there. T for third singular, meaning Z is taking, or Z takes in the present tense. Here it looks like the cats are taking the food, so we'll continue to use the present stem in the formation of the imperfect tense. We have the addition of that E sound, but our primary tense marker is still that ba. And our regular old personal ending, third singular right there. For copy A bot, Z was taking the cake. All right. Let's say that this is a robber who now has money. So consequently, we would say that Z took or Z has taken the money because they now have the money. So there's a verb, cop. Again, this particular verb loses the vowel that marked its conjugation at the end. And what we see here is a vowel change to the root of the verb. So cop was in the present tense. In the perfect tense, uses a long E. So that is our perfect stem, and a lot of verbs do this. So cop goes to cape, but we still use the regular it for the third person singular of the verb. So this is another change that we'll see. A to a. Okay. All right. So there are other stem changes that happen, a couple that are very common, but those are that we reviewed today, I think are most common. So we looked at the perfect tense. We saw that it has an aspect that can either be completed or simple. And with that completed aspect, that would be something like Z has done, whereas the simple is just Z did. For the verb forms, we saw that the stem changes. We saw V was really common for the first conjugation, but we also saw use, like for the verb open. We saw S and X for a couple of verbs. And we saw the changing of an A vowel to an E, a long E vowel for one verb. We also noted that the third plural is maybe a little surprising because it's really long. It's got this eru sound in it, in addition to the nt that we're so accustomed to seeing for the third person plural. Remember, that is the form that we use when they is the subject of the verb. Okay, so this is exciting. The perfect tense is a really, really common tense. And now I hope you'll be able to recognize it when you encounter it. All right, let's get away from the screen share. And I will say, Walite.